Bold prediction time this year. What do you believe as a Pate State collective, as a community, that you would bet your own money on? The first one is going to be polarizing, because the first one has to do with LSU. John in Sacramento, California says LSU makes the playoff this year. Where would you put that on the boldness scale? Now, I know a lot of you, if you're not LSU fans, your immediate default was to laugh and say, ha, yeah, right. Well, we're putting 12 teams in this thing this year. So if your over-under win total is 9.5 and you hit the over, like, think about it. LSU just hits the over, 10 wins. They're in the playoff. I don't care if they're not in Atlanta. They're in the playoff. So we're not talking about 6.5 or 7.5 here. 9.5 is the win total. It's a top 12 roster. There may be holes there. I think there are defensively. Like, candidly, I think 9.5 is a shade high in the odds market. But it doesn't matter. I'm not running the sports book. I'm not running FanDuel. They are. They are plus 128 to make the playoff. They're minus 158 to miss it. That is a straight-up prop bet that you can get at FanDuel right now. Yes, no, make, miss the playoff. Man, this is only an 8. This is not the boldest thing in the world. Like, I may not myself be predicting LSU to make the playoff, but your total's 9.5. You got a top 12 roster. You got not Ryan Day. You got Brian Kelly, who's done it before. That's an 8. That's not the most bold thing in the world to me. Next up, this would be a little bolder. Joe from Nottingham in the UK. No one conference has more than 3 total teams in the playoff. Now, you got to thread a needle on this. So I'm going to call this an 8.75 on the boldness scale. We did our predictions the other day. If you missed that, it's on the YouTube channel right now. I had 4 SEC teams in. I had 3 Big Ten teams in. So I did have a conference going over 3. I had another one at 3. I think if this happens, and it's possible, that means that there was big separation in the SEC. So there were a few big-time teams, or maybe it's the Big Ten as well. There were a few big-time teams, and then there was a big gap. Okay, so you got a bunch of obvious, you got a few obvious, and then a bunch of no, they can't be in. Notre Dame has to be in. They take up a spot. Maybe you get 2 G5s in. You certainly have 1 in. I think this could also be a scenario where a lot of 10-2s got selected over some 9-3s. Because there's still that world. Remember, we don't know how this is going to go. There's still that world where you've got like a 10-2 Missouri, or maybe a 9-3 Missouri, and a 10-2 from the Big Ten or a 10-2 from the Big 12 or ACC gets taken over them. That could very well happen. We don't know how the committee is going to interpret strength of record, strength of schedule. So that's an 8.75 for me. Next up, interestingly, Luke Fickell was sitting at this desk here no more than, I don't know, an hour ago as we're talking in Indianapolis. And DJ hits us and says Wisconsin finishes the season 500 or worse. That's an 8. I think they could be better than that. It's totally contingent on quarterback play. It's totally contingent on a guy who lost his mojo in Tyler Van Dyke finding it in a new place. Grant you that. It's contingent on Phil Longo and that offense just flat out being better than they were expected to be and they were last year. This is a volatile team. Okay, their win total, unlike LSU, their win total is 6.5. It is down there in that lower range. So odds makers aren't all that dissimilar in their expectation to this prediction. They've just got to win their toss-up games. Minnesota, at Nebraska, at Iowa, at Rutgers, Purdue. These are toss-up games. I don't expect them to beat Bama. At USC will be tough for them. Oregon will be tough for them. They win their toss-up games, they're over 500. However, I said that way too easily. I'm putting an 8 on this. Because they're over in the win total 6.5, that's not the craziest thing in the world. That's an 8. And lastly, now we got a chalice-worthy bold prediction here. Paper pop. Malik Murphy. Tyler says Malik Murphy is at the Heisman presentation as a finalist. Malik Murphy's not at Texas anymore, kids. He went to Duke. And everyone's new there. His offensive line, 5 for 5. They're brand new. New starters. They've got a new staff, obviously. Manny Diaz is the head coach there. I keep on saying this, even though a lot of you know that, because I know some of you are just tuning in again because you recognized the offseason, which we don't believe in, but if you wanted to take it, that's your right. So their win total is 5.5. Duke's got to overachieve massively. Even if he's got big numbers, their team has to overachieve massively, or else they're not sending a dude off a 6-6 team to New York City. They're just not going to do it. There are too many other good players out there. So I'm calling this a 9.75. Love Malik Murphy, but that dude's not been a full-time starter yet. You've got newness everywhere. Also, it's Duke, so he's not going to be surrounded by star power like these other guys that he's competing against will be. So that's a 5. That's a 9.5. Their over-under win total is 5.5. Pretty bold there for Malik Murphy.